Henry Dakin, I'm looking at you spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally. I met Henry 1985 through massage, founder of Laura Drews, and I was an intern. He called me, I want a massage, free, no charge, I have to intern. He loved it, boom, I massaged all his clients, all his workers at 3220. Then I became, what do you call it, a caterer, Clara, John Schultz, oh, everybody else. I can name, Virgilia was in your home. Julia! I started teaching martial arts because I'm a martial artist by nature for about 40 years. Look at him, just turn around and look. What a beautiful man he is. Please turn around and look. This is all about him. Right now, this is your space. I love you so much, dear Henry. You're a Sagittarius. I'm a Gemini. We're connected together. Yeah! Love you to death. Peace.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ed Ellsworth, and I had the pleasure to work with Henry from 1985 to about 2005. And I was another behind-the-scenes kind of guy. I was doing a lot of the technical things. And I'm modeling for you one of our tchotchkes from, what year? Does anyone remember? 1988. 1988. And the reason I'm wearing this is because it says joy, and I thought Henry really characterized that in a lot of our lives. He had that childish joy of discovery that we all appreciate about him. Anyway, I'm really sad to see him go, and I'm really pleased to see all of us holding his memory so fondly like this. Thank you.
Hello, this is Dan Seith, and I met Henry at a time of kind of great darkness. It was, I make radiation detectors, and when I was a young radiation detector designer 30 years ago, before the internet, Geiger counters were great big bulky like lunch pails that used expensive batteries and had short battery lives. And somehow, before the internet and everything, this schematic drifted to me somehow, and it had Henry Dakin's signature at the bottom of it. And it was an elegant little tiny radiation detector that would clip on your belt and warn you if radiation was close by. And what was so remarkable about it was that in this age coming out of the vacuum tubes and everything, this had an elegant simplicity and beauty and elegance to it that just was kind of astounding. It would run for like a year on one little battery. And it would also, he had adapted the Geiger tube to also detect neutrons. And so I studied that so much that that name Henry Dakin was etched in my mind. And then years later, after the Chernobyl accident, I'd been serving communities like Greenpeace was a good customer because they would sail their ships down into the French test zone, and all the Geiger counters would get confiscated, and I'd have to resupply them. But my other customers were Native Americans affected by nuclear testing and all these communities that were kind of hung out to dry, and I don't think anybody was more hung out to dry than the Chernobyl-affected communities. Because the Russian government, anyway, Henry and I sent a lot of Geiger counters into the Soviet Union to help those people get information so they could know whether they were safe or not. And I'm very grateful to you, Henry, for being my friend.
Hi, I'm David Coggeshall. I wrote a short piece this morning. I'll read quickly, hope to make it before the bell rings. In memory of my friend Henry Dakin. I met Henry Dakin in 1998 when I was transitioning my career from working with corporations for the previous 30 years to trying to do something more meaningful and more closely related to the community I lived in, San Francisco. Excuse me if I get emotional. The Presidio had recently been turned over from the Army to the National Park Service, and the Presidio Trust had just been formed. I was trying to convert skills that I had developed in mapping, building floor plans, to apply maps, especially the parks, to apply to maps, especially in the parks. I'd heard about Henry and the fact that he was publishing a directory of the Presidio. We visited, and he remarked that the aerial photo that I had created was the best that he had ever seen. From that time on, we worked together on a number of projects, many of which involved the Presidio Alliance, the community group that Henry did so much to support. I met people like Ed Ellsworth and Bob Harlow, Patrice, and of course Virgilia, a never-ending stream of interesting, usually alternative-type folks who would gather at 3220 Sacramento for every sort of interest or cause. Henry and Virgilia provided this wonderful building as a one-of-a-kind incubator and meeting place, and there was a constant stream of diverse activities. One of the first things Henry provided our mutual work was a large format plotter. This machine was used constantly for the next 10 years, printing out an incredible variety of maps and posters for all sorts of different occasions. Henry also bought us both new Sony Mavica digital cameras. I used mine, among other things, to take a picture of virtually every one of the 500 buildings in the Presidio, which would then pop up from the website that you clicked on in the building on our online map. With Henry's help, my wife Karen and I produced the first large user-friendly map of the Presidio, which was then reduced to 11 by 17 colored tablets. These maps have become a staple of the Presidio experience, and I would guess many of you still have a copy. We also got involved with Brewster Kale of the Internet Archive and his initiative to provide free wireless service called SF LAN for San Francisco Local Area Network. We put antenna on many rooftops, including 3220 Sacramento, several buildings in the Presidio, and at the home of myself and several others around town. Over the years, and especially after 9/11, the community action around the Presidio diminished as people became more involved in surviving the economic downturn. Eventually, Henry decided to give up 3220 Sacramento, and so began a year-long task of cleaning out the enormous amount of stuff that had been accumulated in the large storerooms. There were endless files and equipment and spare parts and furniture and on and on. It was a sad day for those of us who had spent so much time there over the years, but one that had to come. After Henry moved his office into his home on Washington Street, I would still visit often to chat and use the big plotter. Soon after, Henry and Virgilia moved to Mill Valley, and we would visit them there. A few years later, they moved up to Ukiah to be closer to their daughters and their mates and their land reserved on Leonard Lake. We had a great long weekend with them, and my wife Karen painted a watercolor view from the porch. Virgilia loved the picture so much she had Karen make it into greeting cards several times, actually. I will miss Henry Dakin. He was my good friend. Thank you very much.
My name is Harry Nazamian. I had the great privilege and honor to serve as the CEO of the Dakin Toy Company. I joined the company in 1961 and started as assistant to the president, and that was Roger Dakin, who was Henry's older brother. We certainly went through a great deal, and in 1967 I became CEO and held that post until 1990. I met Henry in 1961. I didn't know very much about him, and I did know that he worked for the Lawrence Laboratory and that he was a nuclear physicist, but I didn't know he was a lot of other things. And in 1962, we had brought in a couple of radios. This is an FM and AM radio. And Henry said, I want to take a look at the radio. So I was very proud of this little radio I brought in. So Henry comes in, looks at the radio, gets out his screwdriver, takes off the back, looks at the wiring. He says, Harry, this is terrible. But every time I tried to throw this radio away, I thought of Henry. So I still have it after 48 years. My other most favorite memory of Henry is in early 1984, when we were talking. I would visit him often at 3220, and he said, Harry, do you know that there were 7,000 missiles between the United States and the Soviet Union? He said there is not one single telecommunications contact between these two great countries, and he did something about it. I saw him standing there beaming and smiling at the night in 1984 when we heard the cosmonauts' hearts and the astronauts' hearts and the music from the Russians. And it was something to remember forever. I've often told my friends, Henry Dakin did more to end the Cold War than anybody in the United States government or outside of it. So Henry, we know you're a saint, but I have two things against you. One, you crushed my radio, and two, you used to fall asleep in our directors' meetings. Henry, we know that you have extraterrestrial capability, and we know you're in a better place with God. And may you continue to do what you did in this world. Thank you.
I'm Carol Brouillet, and I was nursing a baby the first time I went to 3220, and Claire was there. It was a fundraiser, an anti-nuclear event. Mary Beth was there, and we were raising money. I can't even remember the exact cause, but it was ages ago. And Henry's been such a wonderful supporter of my friends over the years. And in 2002, on the first anniversary of September 11th, the author of the first 9/11 truth book, it was The War and Freedom, his name is Nafeez Ahmed, and he was supposed to come to the United States and speak, but his wife had postpartum depression, and so he stayed with his wife. He couldn't come, and Henry figured out how to do a web link from 3220 to Nafeez, and that was one of the first events. And then Henry hosted our Northern California 9/11 Truth Alliance meetings at 3220 until he sold the building, and was a great supporter and patron of the Truth Alliance. In fact, I remember the first time we had the Northern California 9/11 Truth Alliance meeting. There was one in San Francisco and there was one in New York City, and we were in a circle reading the mission statement and felt we were part of a little circle that would grow and encompass the whole world, and I think it did. And I can't tell you how much I love him, how much I miss him, and I love his family and all the friends that I've met through 3220. Thank you so much for all your love and being here, and oh God, I love you, Henry.